This is going to be our third version of a black and white, another method, a third method on how to convert to black and white. Well, if you're asking yourself why are there so many different methods, well, if you remember back in the darkroom days, if you were ever in the darkroom days, we could process our film in different chemicals. We could process our paper in different chemicals and different filters and achieve different looks for black and white. So black and white is an art form in itself. So here's a third version. Again, I will create a virtual copy, so that way we can take a look at all the different versions. And this one, instead of clicking on black and white here, I'm going to look at the profile and click on the profile browser. Once I'm in the profile browser, I will notice that if I'm shooting in RAW, that I actually have a monochromatic black and white that is from this particular sensor, which is my Canon sensor. So it's a CR2 black and white. Well, let's see what else we have here. We have color artistic tones. We have black and white. Let me close those out. Okay, so we have 17 different black and white options from the Adobe team. So if you hover over each one, you will see the difference. Which one is the right one? Well, which one is the right one for you? How do you like to view your black and whites? I like to view my black and whites fairly rich and moody. So all of these light versions are kind of not doing it for me. I'm going to look for a richer tone. This is getting better. I think this is even better still. So I'm going to choose black and white number 12 for this particular image. Now you can always highlight the little star and that will become your favorite. So that way you don't have to open up the browse window. You can just click on the drop down menu and there's your black and white from this point on. Well, this is a good starting point, but I'm definitely not done here. And I will go ahead into my curves once again. And by the way, in this version of a conversion, I still have my black and white if I want to, my black and white colors. So if I want to bring up the brightness on the reds, I could still do it just here with my black and white color channels. So let's see, I'll bring this up a little bit. Actually, I'm not going to do any of that here. I'm going to reset and I'm going to go to curves. So you are allowed to change your mind. So I'll bring up my blacks and then I will darken the mid shadow area just as I did before. I will lighten up the mid tone. So I'm building up more contrast, more contrast. I do like more contrast in my black and white. And then I will bring down the whites, not too far down because look what's happening to his hat. It's getting gray. So obviously not too far down, but maybe the highlights should be just about here. I'm looking at the histogram. So my highlight is kind of peeking over here. So I'm going to bring that down, up rather, and bring this just slightly down, and bring this slightly down, like so. Now this window kind of looks muddy to me, so I'm going to take my brush tool and I'm going to lighten the exposure, and my brush tool is set with the auto mask on. I think I will leave the auto mask on. I'll make my brush bigger. I will take my flow a bit lower and I will lighten this area right here. And if it's getting too light, I'm going to bring down that exposure level. I'm going to bring down the exposure level. I'll bring it down all the way down to where it was. I'll actually just double click on exposure and I'll bring up my shadows. There we go. That looks a lot better. You see how much more natural it's looking? It doesn't look like it's washed out. I can also add some clarity in there. give it a little bit more punch, I could increase my exposure just a little bit. There we go. Maybe just a little bit of contrast as well. There's not really any highlights, so I won't change my highlights. So that looks better. He is looking pretty good. I guess I already have a filter, or rather a brush on him. Well, let's get rid of this brush. Let's see what he looked like without these brushes. And the hat, there we go. And then I could still create another new brush, bring my shadows slightly darker, increase my clarity, and I could take a smaller brush and just, that's lightening him up a bit too much. That's because my exposure is up. Let's bring the exposure down and bring the shadows down. Let's bring the exposure slightly darker as well. And then I'll create another new brush, and this time I would like to bring in more clarity into his face and just a little bit more contrast into his face as well. I don't know exactly by how much, but I will see as I paint. And there we go. Okay, so he's looking pretty good to me. Of course, I could vignette him with my radial filter, or this time I'll do it with the graduated filter because we used the radial on the other image. Here's my graduated filter. Reset it and darken my shadows. So it's very subtle. If you need it stronger, then use exposure. And then maybe I'll create another gradient, new. Create another one from here, like so. Just darken the edges a little bit. Okay, and of course, again, if you want to make it into a duotone or give it a slightly warmer tone to it, which I tend to like to do, color grading, and I'll just increase the warm just a little bit, just to give it a little bit of a warmer tone. And so let's take a look at all three black and white variation. I selected all three. I'm pressing on the letter N. That puts me in survey view. And then I could press on the letter L as in love, and I can see the three different variations of black and white. You see this one has a bit richer tonality with this particular profile that I used. This one has pretty rich tonality, but I also duotoned him a little bit on the blue side, so this is a little warm, this is a little blue, and this is more of a neutral. Now if you look at the detail of the window, it looks a bit muddy on the one with the blue tone. So pay attention to all the tonality and you decide what is a good black and white to you.